Afternoon, everybody. We're so happy to be here for the second time, for the second year. My name is Joaquín Triandafilide from Asociación Chilena de Neuroaprendizaje. I want to welcome you to our second conference on bilingual education Chile. And as we hear that sound, it means more people are coming in to share this afternoon. I would like to introduce Lilian Turri, who will be also welcoming everybody today. And as Lily connects her camera, Lily, we're happy to have you join us as well. How are you this afternoon?
Hola, Joaquín, gracias. I'm quite nervous, I would say, to be honest, but really enjoying the possibility to offer this second version. So I'm pleased to see that many teachers are attending to our conference.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your words. And I know Lily will be at times speaking Spanish and English, and she has some news to give us in a couple of minutes. Before we move on to our first speaker today, a couple of announcements, a couple of important announcements. Number one, we want to welcome people connecting from different countries. I know there are people connecting from Chile, of course, from Brazil, from Argentina, from Peru. We have many people from Peru connecting today. And hopefully you can let us know if there are people connecting from other countries, maybe Paraguay, Uruguay, or countries that are Mexico, people connecting from Mexico. Yeah, so everybody is welcome to this second version of the conference on bilingual education. Lily, let me share a new interactive feature that we have, which is taking place on Instagram. For those who are filter lovers, Instagram lovers, please go right now to Instagram on the account Comunidad Neuroeducas, and you will find a new filter. So you will, in the stories, you will be able to find the instructions, a tutorial on how to use this new filter. So you can access the filter, make a short video, upload it, post it on your own stories, and don't forget to tag Brickchem or Cambridge University Press Chile or Asociación Chilena de Neuroaprendizaje. Lily, what news are you bringing for us, and why is this happening in Spanish too?
Hola, buenas tardes. Primero, a los que no me conocen, soy Lilian Turri. Soy la Country Manager para Cambridge University Press en Chile. Y estamos felices de poder estar aquí con ustedes por segunda vez, por segundo año consecutivo. Ha sido un trabajo arduo, emocionante, pero bueno, lo logramos, ¿no es cierto? Y este año tenemos, como decía Joaquín, novedades. Una de las novedades es que una de nuestras conferencias y uno de los paneles de expertos va a ser en español. Por lo tanto, ahí hay un cambio interesante. Por otra parte, tendremos un sorteo, sí, vamos a tener rifas en que vamos a ofrecer, una rifa de un programa de becas para un curso de inglés en Content, Language and Integrated Learning. Así que ahí va a haber una opción también de ustedes de participar. Y por último, comentar que van a haber breakout rooms entre cada conferencia en que ustedes van a tener, si lo quieren, la oportunidad de estas meet and greet rooms para poder visitarlas y preguntarnos y saber de nuestros productos y de nuestras marcas. Así que están todos invitados. Joaquín.
Yep. switching back to English. I hope the brains have to do this two language
You'll do it. You'll
work.
do it. Don't worry.
We can do it. We can all do it, right?
Yeah.
Well, apart from what Lilian is commenting, I'd like to add a couple of things. How the program comes for this afternoon. We're starting right now, right after we leave the plateau. We'll be having Jorgelina Carlassare present, followed by Simon Lind from the UK. Then we'll have Andre Hedland from Brazil, and we'll finish the afternoon with a panel of experts, a great panel of experts with a very interesting topic, and that will be conducted by Greg Holland from the British Chamber of Commerce in Chile. Okay, so that will take us until 6:30 in the afternoon. So stay tuned, stay with us for the rest of the afternoon so that you are considered in the raffles. Remember about the filter, so you can start taking like the hot points of the afternoon and get them posted on Instagram. And I'd like to leave you now in very good company with Pilar Zarate, Senior Consultant for Cambridge University Press. Pilar, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. Okay.
Hello.
Good luck with the next part.
Okay, thank you, Joaquin. Hello, everybody, and welcome again. I'm Pilar Zarate, English teacher and academic consultant for Cambridge University Press. Well, before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions, just type them in the chat box. So we will read it after the speaker has finished, and she will be addressing them and answer the questions. Well, today I'm very pleased to present our first speaker. Her name's Jorgelina Carlassare from Universidad Pedagógica Argentina. Jorgelina's presentation will be about how to make CLIL local, adopting a very interesting pedagogical approach called place-based learning. Okay, this approach uses places and resources of the community where students live as the foundation for their learning across the curriculum. Okay, Jorgelina will also share her experiences in real teaching contexts and will invite us to think of our own proposals and ideas to motivate our students and also improve their learning outcomes. Well, without any further ado, let's welcome Jorgelina to our conference. Hello, Jorgelina. Welcome.
Hello, how are you doing? Fine. I don't know if it's the camera is opened. Can you see me, right? Yes, okay. Well, thank you for the introduction. I will share my presentation, my PowerPoint presentation. And well, thank you for being here. I am very happy to share with so many people from different parts of the Americas my presentation called Place-Based Learning, How to Make CLIL Local. Well, I would like to add something else about myself that is not academic, but I think that is going to be important considering the title and the content of the presentation. Sorry. Well, I am from Argentina. I live in Mar del Plata, though I'm not Marplatense. I really like this city because it's a great source of Udus resources for the approach I'm going to share with you today. Mar del Plata is on the Atlantic coast of my country. It's a seaside resort. It has very, very frozen winters and mild summers, and it's a typical place where many Argentinian people go on vacations in summer and also in winter. I am saying all this because I think that it's very important to introduce oneself, telling the audience where you are from, right? Home is where your story begins. And my story as a teacher of English, I have been teaching for 30 years, and I have been a teacher trainer for 23 years, okay, is shaded, colored by the place where I live. Apart from the academic presentation, I want to tell you that I consider myself an educator. I'm not just an English teacher. I consider myself an agent of change because I do believe that we have to encourage our learners to develop a voice in the classroom, to think critically, to think for themselves and revalue their beliefs, traditions, and cultures, right? So in this case, the approach that I'm going to share with you today is related to this kind of pedagogy, right? For many years, I taught content without or ignoring that it was CLIL, because imagine 30 years ago, it was related to content-based instruction, right? But CLIL, that, well, can be rooted to the 1994 by March, last century, was not the approach, at least in Argentina. But I insisted on teaching content and language together, right? In that case, I started observing that in some places where I work, especially vulnerable contexts, my students were not so well motivated to learn the language. They didn't see this situation as an opportunity for their future. So I started introducing localized content related to our community, to Mar del Plata in this case, to give them the chance to feel familiar with the content and to face the linguistic challenge, right, as okay, something to overcome, but feeling that they had something to show, to bring into the classroom that were part of their identity. That ownership of content made many students, right, of the groups I had, to feel more confident, to think that they were managing their own learning process, that they were developing a sort of healthy self-esteem in relation to English, right? So little by little, I started investigating, and I discovered a lot of bosses who were in favor of introducing local content or localized culture, right, into the classroom. We can mention Widowstone, Byram, Crams, among others. Well, considering the title of the presentation, I could say that place-based learning, yes, is a multi-faceted approach that embraces students' context, community, surroundings. And this approach can be placed or can be carried out everywhere in different scenarios we have. I have worked with this type of approach with secondary students, with primary students, in a teacher training college, and in the School of English I run, right? And then we have CLIL, right? That, as you know, is content and language integrated learning, right? And within this approach, this umbrella term, there are different ways of teaching English and language, okay, in an integrated way, including learning skills. So in this case, generally, we can, it's like CLIL is typically, traditionally associated with subject matters such as social studies or chemistry or mathematics or geography. And one of the obstacles that we have, teachers of English, is that we feel that we are not, okay, prepared to teach this type of content, right? So, I mean, I love social studies, but I'm not a history teacher, right? So when working with localized culture, we are managing social studies or language art or art in general, but within a familiar framework. So we can feel more self-confident in relation to this content that is going to be taught and is going to be learned, right? So is localized content one of the solutions? I mean, I'm presenting an experience, right? Something that I have been teaching for many years in different scenarios. I don't know if it is the solution for lack of motivation, low levels of performance, or poor results in tests. But in my case, I found it very useful and very encouraging. One of the questions that triggered my studies, right, when I was taking a course of studies based on CLIL, was this question by Guidosa. How can English, a school subject, be designed to suit the local circumstances as well as provide the best investment for life? Because when students don't want to take risks, don't want to invest time or energy, don't feel self-confident in relation to the target language and target culture, the results are very, very poor. So with this question and CLIL, right, material, I found a lot of connections, right, among the elements that comprise CLIL, right, the 4 C's, cognition, community, content, and communication, and localized content. Localized content can be placed in relation to community, because we are dealing with content that is important, that is valued, significant for the community we are teaching. Content, because we are talking about different areas. Communication, because we are communicating ideas, feelings, we are taking a stand in relation to local topics. And cognition above all, because we are comparing and contrasting, we are synthesizing, so on and so forth. Sorry. Okay, so here we have, a definition that is related to local cultural content, right? And I have found among Canada bibliography a lot of information about this. And it says that local cultural content is unique, really unique, because it's part of the community in which it is being taught. And in this case, I would like to make a pause apart from my, my source route, right? But I would like to tell you that in this presentation, I imagine that many ideas will be sparked off by the idea of working with local content, because as we were discussing in the very beginning of this presentation, there are people from Argentina, from Chile, from Mexico, from Peru. And well, I imagine that maybe you start thinking about something related to Santiago, or if you are from Argentina, to Misiones, or any place you live offer you many possibilities and opportunities to vary, to spice up with content your classes, right? This is something that I found rather, I mean, it was relaxing. Okay, well, I will teach these linguistic items related to tenses, vocabulary, functions. Well, the idea was, how can I contextualize all these linguistic items with the content we share, teacher and students, within this classroom? And I found a lot of topics that truly, okay, arouse students' motivation and interest, right? So, as I told you, there are some benefits. Of course, this is not the approach to solve all the problems on the new educational settings, but in many places, okay, when we put into practice this type of approach, we foster strong links between the school and students' own community, between the school and students' real world, right? On the other hand, we offer students the possibility to expand their background knowledge on their own culture and at the same time create a space for their own voices in the target community as well as in the global village. What is more, I think that no one who doesn't know their own person identity or target source culture is ready to learn a language successfully. I think that if you know who you are, what you feel, what you want to share with the world, right? Learning a foreign language gains significance, right? Then you can expand knowledge about their source culture, something that is very important, especially with young people. They can feel more confident when learning L2. Students will gain empowerment, they will feel voiced, they can develop a certain community stewardship, and they also develop language awareness and a critical attitude towards the source as well as target community. I would like to tell you that within this approach, CLIL is present because there are language learning objectives, because there are content learning objectives, and because there is also learning skill development. And here we have the connection, the integration, the marriage of these three elements that make up CLIL, right? Here we have some examples, right? Students will talk about the past of their city. They will narrate legends of their place. They can exchange information that they have investigated, or they can listen to others and make their ideas be respected and listened, or they may exchange information to check doubts, or they can ask for clarification when there are doubts related to content, learning skills. And well, content is core, yes, is the central part of it. They will articulate their existing knowledge about the city with the new information. And this is something that I have discovered. I got really surprised to see that some of my students, or most of my students, didn't know a lot of things about Mar del Plata. It was like, come on, you live here, you were born here. Well, in the project, in many projects I put into practice in the classrooms I offered my students new opportunities to get acquainted with new brand data about the city. And they felt happy to know about it. They wanted to share that information with other people. They discovered that they could talk about their cities, about their communities, about their identities in English with people from different parts of the world. And in this case, okay, we are talking about significant bilingual practices. I mean, you want to talk about yourself in another language, and it's not that you want to talk about Trafalgar Square or Central Park in English, because you are not from that place. You are from Mar del Plata, you want to talk about the city, you want to make others know what is going on in your community, which are your ideas about the communities. And I insist on this motto. I haven't mentioned it yet. It's a surprise for me. Think globally, act locally. Our students should gain confidence in this global village, feeling that they are active participants of the communities, different communities, right? And they have to develop that agency, which enables them to become cooperative, active, and ready to act in their own settings. I think that when you start with a project work, you have to think about your final output. This is like the horizon. And when working with this project work named Spotlight on Mar del Plata, in many cases, I offer to my students a menu of possible final outputs. Of course, the ideas are related to students' cognitive possibilities, their age, their interests will also influence that menu, but there are a lot of ideas that we can carry out in the classroom with our students, but there should be a final output if we are talking about the project work. They can prepare trivia, and then you can organize an open house session, inviting their families into the classroom to play together. They can organize a debate or produce a podcast, but there should be a final output, right? Many projects, my students decided to prepare a scrapbook about the city because as their language level was developing, they found it easier to write, but also to illustrate or add photographs or pictures to what they were producing in the language, right? So if it was their option, it was welcomed, and then it was shared with their families and with other students from different courses. The project, and I would like to offer you, if you want to write to me, then I will give you my email account. I have a handout with a teaching sequence in which this project work is developed in detail, right? So if you write to me, I can send it to you. So the project work called Spotlight on Mar del Plata, imagine that you can call it Spotlight on Misiones, on Viña del Mar, on, I don't know, Rio de Janeiro. We worked with the earliest times of the city. Yes, social studies, right, was the focus. They discovered that there are fossils in our cities in some museums, right? Then they investigated about the original communities, the Huelches, Pampas, and then they moved into another area, which was the 18th century. They peek into the past when Mar del Plata started as a village. Something that I try to do is to connect the past with the present, right? Imagine that if we are talking about the origin of the city, yes, I asked them to spot on the map the place where the first villagers started settling down, yes, and maybe it's 10 blocks from their houses, right? So, wow, okay, here everything started. In these types of activities, I produced my own material, right? And I think that this is something that is key. It's not only reading comprehension activities, because generally when we work with social studies, we tend to work with texts of different types and then design different questionnaires or true or false activities. For me, we have to work with graphic organizers, with different tasks. In this case, we work a lot with timelines, right? And with information gap activities. So some students had some information and they had to exchange the information to end up with another activity, right? In which both pieces of information were needed. When we worked with the origin of the names of streets, we worked also with comprehensive sexuality education, ESI, at least in Spanish, because we wanted to know, okay, the number of streets named after women. And we discovered that though Mar del Plata is a city of 1 million inhabitants, so imagine all the streets that you can walk along in our city, just 97 streets were named after women, and all the women were teachers. So students really generally get surprised because of that. And we can conclude that 100 years, I don't know, in the 19th or 20th century, women didn't go to the university. I mean, many famous women were teachers or artists in many cases, but not many professions, okay, turn up when thinking about women in the past. And so they work on spotting on the map, they investigate the origin of the names of these streets. They find that it's not just a label, that there is some story behind it. And in that case, they start, well, in many project works, when students investigated, they got really surprised and interested because of that. And in this case, they started writing biographies, right? Because again, I insist on this. It's not just giving them a text and answering questions. For me, it's thinking about different tasks that can be used in the classroom, as well as different text types, right? In this case, we started working with biographies because the following step was related to artists, right? Iconic artists of Mar del Plata, Piazzolla. I think that most of us know Piazzolla, Alfonsina Storni, and they started investigating about the different monuments honoring Piazzolla and Storni. Some of my students didn't know that Alfonsina Storni committed suicide in one of the famous beaches of our city. So they started investigating Alfonsina's biography and found some poems translated into English. And while we worked on that area that is not so easy to find when working with localized culture, especially if the community's first language is Spanish. And then as a close-up of the project, we started working with the future, right? Because when we think about place-based learning, in most of the bibliography that you can read about it, it's directly connected with the environment, with sustainability, and related to taking care of the place where you live. And in this particular case, Mar del Plata is not a very sustainable city. We have a lot of problems related to the environment, though there are some projects that want to make the city a sustainable city in Argentina. So we worked on this area with possible actions to make it, to make the city sustainable, right? All in all, if you can see this humble teaching proposal, you can see that English is everywhere. Because sometimes when we think of CLIL, the question that pops up is, but I have to teach English, I have to teach verbs, I have to teach grammar or vocabulary. And then you see that with this type of content, language is vital, is paramount. So in order to work with the earliest times, a peek into the past, the origin of the names of streets, and also iconic artists, I had to work with simple past, with past perfect, right? When thinking about the future, I had to introduce simple future, vocabulary related to environment, so on and so forth. So English is present, okay? CLIL is the approach, right? And localized content is like the main thread that intertwines the different tasks that I'm putting into practice. So it's really a combination that is not so common, but it's very important to bear in mind that you can teach within CLIL approach using local content, because you are teaching, okay, history, geography, language art, mathematics, or whatever you want to teach. When we avoid working with significant content or with content our students feel familiar with, right? Or in this case, when we avoid working with localized content, naturally, we are depriving our students from opportunities to apply the learning to the real world, right? In many cases, right, students feel reluctant to feel proud about their own identity, about their community. They feel that the local stories are not important, that are not valid, okay? And that, okay, we are not offering them a lot of opportunities to contribute with new ideas and approaches to their own communities, because this is the ultimate goal of education. We are equipping people with tools that will be used in their nearer surroundings. So I think that we have to rethink the classroom. It's not just teaching content in a vacuum of significance. It's teaching content for for a better future. Going back to the beginning of the presentation, I am an educator. I am an agent of change. I want to invoice my students and equip them with different tools they will need to make a world a better place. All in all, I don't know if I am okay with time. We are, with this type of project work, we are revisiting the history of students' hometown, right? Something that perhaps students didn't study, or they studied in primary school in 4th year, but they don't remember. Yes?
5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. Students perhaps find it interesting to search for data about their city, to update their knowledge about Mar del Plata in this particular case. I'm sure that they start revaluing their local values, right? Something I haven't mentioned is that with this type of approach, you are working in favor of the development of intercultural competence, right? In which you work with beliefs, values, knowledge, and skills. Okay, well, we can help students to plan sustainable actions for their own community, right? And what is more, they can start thinking globally but acting locally, right? And to end up, I would like to share this phrase that says, communities are transformative places that create opportunities. Challenges may be global, but responses are local. So, well, I don't know if I have finished exactly when I was supposed to finish.
Yeah, we're okay. We're okay with time, Jorgelina. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for all the brilliant ideas that you have given us this afternoon. And well, we have some questions. Here's
Okay.
one from Raquel. She's very thankful for your presentation and for sharing your experiences in a real context. And she's asking, what, here it is. Oh, yeah. What do you think about the connection with other cultures? Is it possible to have a mix of contents related to other cultures?
Yes, I think that something that I haven't mentioned, but in many cases, I work almost in the last part of the project work with content related to the target communities. I mean, for instance, Mar del Plata is very similar to Brighton, UK. So we work with content related to Brighton, and they compare, contrast both cities and find information that helps them see that there are other parts of the world that have similar characteristics. Because when we think about the intercultural competence that we should develop, and thinking about myself as an intercultural mediator, as a teacher, I think that we have to help people to start thinking about themselves right? So they understand who they are, moving towards the target community, and then coming back, right, to their own community with an enriched view of who they are, okay, what they want, why they are different or similar to another place. So in that case, I think that it's very important, right? Of course, thinking about a whole school year, I would mix up this type of project work with many other ideas, right? It's not that I'm only teaching about Mar del Plata. It's impossible. But okay, we have the possibility to include other project works with different contents. But when working with the source, right, or L1 community, we should also spice up with something that comes from the target language community.
Thank you, Jorgelina. Here's another question. As a teacher, how do you integrate or invite teachers of other subjects to work on a shared plan for the school?
Okay, it's a very interesting question because generally where I work, the teacher of English is the one who has to invite herself to other project work. It's not that from the English department, okay, the whole school project moves around. I mean, it's the other way around. So in general, when we are starting working in Argentina, we start working in February, I start asking the other teachers of other areas, right, what they are going to do. And in general, I find connections with the content. Imagine that they're working with economy, with, I don't know, with the pandemic, how the pandemic is affecting the market, thinking about secondary school. Well, so I'm going back to, okay, what happened in Mar del Plata during this period? Has the pandemic affected my hometown? If so, why? Can you see? So the idea is that we have to be, English teachers, have to be open to what is going on in some other areas, because it's really hard to find that the other subjects, right? It's not easy. It's not easy. I don't. It has never happened to me that the other subjects decided to say, "Hello, Jorgelina, what are you doing? Well, how can we join you in your planning?" No, it never happened. So I think that we have to be resourceful. I really like using the metaphor of Tinkerbell, where all, okay, people who teach English are generally thinking, right, curating material and making this material, okay, a part of something that is more neutral, more, perhaps it's a publishing house teaching proposal, that is to say, a book. So in that case, I am very open-minded to be part of others' projects, right? And I think that most of the topics that are part of the curricula today can be localized with local culture.
Thank you. Well, I think that answers another question that Billy Forward posted. Is this approach integrated throughout all subjects? And well, the answer is yes, according to what.
Yes, most of it. In general, this is a piece of advice, right? Avoid artificial connections. Sometimes there are topics which seem to be okay, very, very different, that they don't match easily. So if we have the chance to choose, because in many cases we have the opportunity to choose, right? We have to narrow the scope and decide that maybe I really like social studies and literature or art, so I'm going to work with that type of content, right? I have to find material, something that I haven't mentioned, but it's very important. Today we are talking about translanguages, right? For many years, using L1 in the classroom was forbidden. Today, we are moving towards a different perspective, right? Where we have to respect students' whole battery of linguistic practices. So if we are working on a place, right, such as Mar del Plata, or again, Buenos Aires, Santiago, Sucre, I imagine different places from this map, and we don't have material in English, we should accept all the different types of input in L1, and then I have to be ready, because this is a teaching strategy, to be ready to help students, okay, use that information and transform that information into a text, of course, in L2, that is of their ownership. Because if not, we end up using Google Translator, yes? So we have to teach our kids to extrapolate what they know in L1, right, to what they can say or write in L2. And this is something that is rather difficult, because we start saying think in English, or Spanish is forbidden here, and in some contexts it's not possible, right? We have to respect the wide array of linguistic practices that our students bring into the classroom. And this is also putting value, right, towards our students' identity, onto different communal practices. This is key, because if not, we tend to play the Roman empire, okay, thread. What comes with me is what is valid, right? And in that case, we don't have the chance to lower the affective filter students have when learning a foreign language.
All right, thank you. And
and there is another question.
Yes,
I'm reading about digital tools.
There is another question, yes. There is another question, but there is another one that has to do a little bit with the previous answer. What are some competencies that you think are key for students to have or develop in order to make progress in their learning with this approach?
Well, I think that CLIL helps me to think of 3 different areas, right? First of all, I think that you cannot learn content if you don't activate learning skills. It's impossible. So I think that above all, I'm thinking about Bloom's taxonomy, right? So students approach content, they understand, they analyze it, maybe they can recreate it, they can judge it. So I think that on one hand, I have learning skills that should be activated with interesting and valid, tasks. And I am making a difference between task and activity, okay, a real life task. On the other hand, communication, using digital tools, I think that is key to help them to use digital tools to co-produce, right? In Spanish you say prosumidor, and in English you say producer with S. Okay, the one who produces and uses the information. We have to give them the possibility to communicate using all the tools they have by hand. And then we have the content, and this is something that generally is disregarded, but when you want to use, today, when you travel, when you study, when you are applying for a job, and you have to use English, generally you are asked to talk about yourself, what you can do, where you are from, the expectations you have, and you are talking about yourself, right, in English. Mm-hmm. So in that case, I think that we are moving around the 3 areas that CLIL and focuses on. And I would add the 4 C's, Yeah, I insist that today we have to work on cooperation, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. And I tend to add number 5, that for me is choice. We have to give them the opportunity to choose. That is why I start the project work with a menu in which they have different final outputs that they can choose to present, to display, to show to their community. So in that case, I think that we have to work on this type. Some authors call them soft skills. Well, some others work on the idea of the 4 skills. But in general, we are talking about not content, right, without being used to do or to achieve something.
Yeah, you're right. I think choice is very important to have the freedom to choose, to make a decision, and because that also makes them feel, empowered and with self-esteem, good self-esteem.
Yes.
And there is another question, a very interesting question here from Jose. He says, could we include special education needs students in this kind of scenario, and how?
Yes, I think that most of us are not ready to work with. Maybe I'm talking about Argentina's reality, but in general, in our teacher training college, in the course of studies, that type of education is not truly included. Though I think that today we can work with differentiated instruction, with tiered activities, grading activities within the general or the mainstream set of tasks. In general, we have to think about different levels of credibility, and it's not so easy to think that everybody's ready to work to achieve the same learning objectives because they are in the same course or they have the same age. It's idealistic. So in many cases, with this type of approach, I think that we can offer students with special needs different activities they can do. And in this particular case, when we work with localized culture and content, revaluing students' identity, we should invite families, right? There should be activities in which students go home and ask their parents, grandparents about their roots, about they can ask about changes in the community. If in the past, okay, the coastline was or had the same buildings. I mean, when you invite family members, okay, we work together and everybody with their own characteristics is invited and feels invited, right, to take part of the course project work. So maybe one of our students is able to display a poster with some photographs and maybe words, and this is sort of graffiti, and perhaps another student is able to write an essay about Mar del Plata and the lack of possible sustainable actions for its future, so on and so forth. I mean, when we invite everyone to feel free to choose and to go home and get information and be ready to do something that can be labeled as hands-on activities, we are being inclusive.
And I have a question and a request. There's a question about technology, the one that you were reading. How often do you use digital tools? You mentioned them, that they're important, but maybe you could also suggest or tell us which ones you use frequently.
Yeah, in general, it depends on the context where you work. When I use this type of project work with teacher training, in the teacher training college work, I like asking my teachers to be the design of a blog, right? Working with blogging and working with podcasts, right? Because they are autonomous students and they are ready to produce. When working with secondary students, I think that it depends on their not only digital skills, but digital, devices. And maybe some people here may understand. It's not just a question of, okay, I'm ready to I don't know, to produce a digital poster, then I have to have connectivity to do it, right? So in many cases, I work with photos, right? They can record themselves talking about their favorite place of Mar del Plata, and maybe we use it. Okay, they send it to using WhatsApp, right? And sometimes we work with blogs, right? And in many cases they record some videos, yes, and it's that type of apps. When thinking about the School of English, a different reality, different students with different interests. We try to use technology as a means of, of collecting, gathering information, and then producing their own product for displaying in an open house session, right? There are different, in one of the slides of the PowerPoint presentation, there were some possible final outputs. And I included Kahoot, or they could prepare a sort of trivia. There are many apps in which they can prepare some games. I think that a wiki is interesting when working in groups, so there is a co-construction of content, so they can prepare something that can be published. Because here the key element is to be ready to publish it, to be ready to show it, to display to your community. It's not just something that should be corrected and put it into the folder. So you passed the exam, okay, we go to the course. I think that it becomes valid, significant, motivating when you know that what you are doing will be shared with with different members of your community. And though some families don't speak English, yes, when they are invited to an open house session, for instance, we share the content. So it's easier to make family members feel safe and comfy in the classroom, in the English classroom.
Oh, all right, Jorgelina, thank you. And the last, it's not a question, it's a request. Climene Arruda, well, is congratulating you for sharing all your experiences and your presentation. I would like to know if she could have access to the scrapbooks that your students have produced. Is there a place where she or he can go?
You mean now?
No, I guess that you could maybe tell us where in your Instagram or
okay,
email.
no, I would like to
Would you,
be
if you
emailed, and I send you material, right? I think that it's very interesting to see that some students can produce their work. Sometimes, again, their work is displayed along the corridors of the schools we work. Sometimes, okay, we are. We take photos. There are different records, but please, if you want, write to me, right? And I can share different things that I have. And what is more, I think that I hope, I don't know if you, if it was possible for you, right? But while I was speaking, I hope everyone started thinking about their hometowns and all the possibilities that, okay, these places offer you to be used as localized content. My email address is, I don't know where the at is, but it's tcorner. Maybe Felicita or Andrea who are.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think we can share your email with the attendees, Jorgelina.
Okay, but
Uh-huh.
it's tcorner@gmail.com. And
Okay.
I can send you material because I have been working with this approach for many, many years, and there are different things that you can extrapolate to your own surroundings. I mean, I hope you were able to gain the ideas that can be possibly used next week in your class.
Mhm. Thank you, Jorgelina, for such a wonderful presentation. We have learned a lot, and please stay around, stay with us. There are more speakers coming at, well, we have Simon Lind at 10 to 3, okay? And before Simon's presentation, there will be a 20-minute session, a meet and greet sessions with the hosts and the people who are supporting and assisting other speakers, the speakers of this conference. So
I would like to say sorry because there was a moment in which I thought I couldn't continue because of my throat. Sorry.
that's
I
all
started
right.
drinking water, but well, I don't know what happened to me.
No,
Well,
that's
but it
fine.
was a pleasure to be with you, and I think that we could go on speaking about this approach for hours, but well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye-bye.